So let's do the Q&A. Let's see what we got here. If you got a question, go ahead and throw it into the Q&A box, and I'll be happy to answer it. It's about anxiety or anything, really. Okay, yeah. So somebody said that, you know, now that they're telecommuting, they feel like they should be getting a lot more done around their home, right? So their mind says, right, you should be doing a lot more. And then that's giving them more stress, right? This is what the mind does, right? It tells us, hey, this is not enough. You need to do more, or those stories show up. And that would be a place to practice, like, oh, noticing like, I'm having a hard time relaxing because I feel like I should be doing more, right? Start small. If there's things that you want to get done or little projects that you want to tackle, you know, start small and just focus on that one thing. If you find yourself going and getting distracted by, you know, 14 other things that you got to do, use that as a time to practice mindfulness, right? Oh, there I go, trying to get into something else, and come back to that one thing that you were working on, okay? Because when you complete that, you're going to feel really good. It's going to impact your mood. No problem. Okay, so somebody said, what do you think it means if you are less anxious in quarantine than outside in quote unquote regular life? I think that that's probably a difficult question to answer because it could be a lot of things. I think that a few of the things that I've seen for folks is that this has been a time for them to actually rest, right? Our culture says, like, you know, values hard work, but sometimes we value hard work to our own detriment, right? It's like always like go, 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 do. I only feel good about myself as long as I'm doing. And some people, right, having this space to finally rest is allowing them to feel less anxious. Other people, it's really kind of clarified some of their priorities in life, right? Maybe some people are like, maybe the job that I've been working in, you know, I need to, when this all goes back, I need to look at something else. Or for some of those folks that have lost their jobs, right? Maybe they're thinking that job wasn't the one for me. I'm going to pursue something else. Maybe I'm going to pursue a passion that my mind always told me, right? This is not going to be possible. You know, maybe it's the time that you're saying, hey, maybe I can do this thing. So what I would say is, you know, really try to tune into that and maybe write down what are some things that are different about my quarantine life that opposed to that regular life. And that might give you a little bit of clarity on why you're feeling less anxious. That's a really good question. Somebody said, would you possibly host a webinar on anxiety going back into the real world? Maybe we'll do that. Is it normal to feel like anxiety is normal and not something to pay attention to? Is it normal to feel like anxiety is normal and not something? Yeah, of course. You know, we've all learned different ways of interacting with anxiety. Most of us have been taught that anxiety is bad, right? But your anxiety can do a lot for you, right? It can right? You know, in this webinar, I was totally anxious at the beginning and throughout. And that anxiety sort of helped sharpen my mind to keep me on track. Anxiety can be a part of creativity, right? Some people get really creative when they have to problem solve when they're on a time crunch, right? Some people work better in that like threat level midnight, if you've ever seen The Office state, right? Where tomorrow's they've got a deadline, you know, so anxiety is a very normal response. And if you can give it space, you can really learn a lot about yourself. It's a great question. Any other questions? No questions, huh? Even if it's a question you always wanted to ask a therapist, I'm game for it. Yeah. So somebody was just kind of commenting about how maybe like what I'm taking from this is how maybe the landscape of work is going to change, right? Maybe we thought that we had to be like a physical body at work, and maybe we're realizing now that we can do some of this at home. You know, that's one of my hope for some people, right? That with this whole COVID thing might create a better work and life balance. And that employers can see that people can still be very productive, and actually more productive sometimes if they have that better balance, right? So if anything, try to pay attention to right now some of the things that are making you feel most alive or most connected to you or most living towards your values, and try to think practically, how can I carve out some of what I've gotten here to take back with me when I have to go back to real life work? How can we not feel guilty about those who have lost their jobs? What are some methods to get over grief or guilt? Okay, that is a really good question. Okay, so I'm trying to think about where to start. It's very normal to feel that, right? Like some people have lost their jobs, and that is really sad. And I think it's normal that some of us feel a little bit guilty because we're still able to work and other people are not, right? And when it comes to grief or guilt in particular, if we view again emotions as alarms, right? Tuning into that guilt or grief, right? Usually when we feel guilt, it's because we've done something wrong, right? But when we feel guilt when we haven't done something wrong, that might be the time to notice and say, oh, I might be borrowing that guilt from somewhere else. But also to maybe do the opposite of what our guilt is telling us to do, right? Because the emotion doesn't fit the facts of the situation, right? Think about it this way. If you had the very unfortunate, just this whole idea of emotions as alarms and maybe doing the opposite. If you had the very unfortunate event of getting mugged in an alley one day, chances are that when you walk by an alley, some of those feelings are going to come up, right? But maybe one day you're hanging out with some friends and you're walking in your city, wherever you're at, and you want to go to this cool place to eat once all this social distancing stuff's over. And they're like, hey, let's cut through this alley right here, right? It's a shortcut. Otherwise, we're going to have to go all the way around, right? So you might feel that fear about getting mugged in that alley come up, right? And you might tune into that and go, okay, I'm feeling really afraid. Is there an actual threat here? And you might look down the alley. It's all sunny outside. There's nobody there. You're in this big group of friends. That might be a time to go, okay, my emotion is saying run or fight or whatever, but this might be the time to go, okay, this doesn't fit the facts of the situation. So I'm going to do the opposite of what my emotion is telling me to do, right? If you were by yourself and you looked down that alley, it was late at night, and you saw a whole group of people that looked unfriendly, for instance, in that alley, that probably would not be a good time to not listen to your emotion. It might be just a better time to err on the side of, I don't know if something's bad is going to happen, but that doesn't look like a safe environment, right? So if you're feeling guilty, right, you can't control your feelings and you can't control the thoughts that show up. It just showed up. So I would just be gentle with yourself about that and practice gratitude for the fact that you do have a job, right? There's no reason to feel guilty. You didn't do anything wrong, okay? That's a great question. I love that. Okay. Awesome question. Somebody said, I noticed since a lot of us have been working from home, there has been an increase of alcohol consumption. What would you advise those who are moderately drinking but increasing their consumption? It's great. So like I said, This is a time to pay attention, right? One of the ways that you can pay attention is by tracking, right? So you can open up and they have several of these now, I think, apps where you can track how many drinks you're having, or you can open up a note on your phone and just type in, how many drinks you have. And that might just give you some really good information. And the next level of it would be to tune in when you want to drink. Okay, so when you're reaching for that cocktail or that beer or weed or whatever it is, first make some space to tune into that urge, right? Am I feeling particularly stressed? Am I feeling particularly anxious? Is this why, right? So if you use that as just kind of a way to kind of practice mindfulness, right? When you go to reach for that, go, oh, what's going on here? Let me tune into myself. And also tracking can give you a lot of clarity maybe on your drinking behavior, right? Hopefully that's helpful. I think we got time for like one or two more. Okay. Yeah. So somebody said that they have a mobility issue and they're not looking forward to walking the half mile from the parking lot to the office when they go back. And they're worried that they're going to get depressed when they actually do have to go back to work. Yeah, I could totally understand that. I think some of what this time has afforded people is time to spend time with their family, right? And so I think that there will be some loss that some of us will experience in having life return to normal, or the busyness of life. And I think that that is okay and normal, and you can't control it. And I would just make some room for that feeling. All right. Whoops. So thank you for attending. I'm really glad that you guys came out and joined me in this. I hope it was helpful for you. And remember, there's going to be a survey at the end here. And if you could fill that out, that would be super helpful for me. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks, everybody.